Ghost moved through the night city like a shadow, but shadows feared him. Every footstep left no trace, yet every sensor, every hidden camera, recorded him. Not that anyone would survive long enough to see it. The target was simple: intercept a convoy carrying modified crops. Simple enough for mortals, but Ghost wasn't mortal. He had walked through empires that rose and fell like sandcastles. He had fought wars that no historian would ever write about. And now, for the first time in centuries, he was hunting something that might outlast him. The city stank of decay and ozone. Raven, his partner and one of his immortals, waited in the shadows, fingers dancing across a portable terminal, already inside the convoy's encrypted telemetry. Ghost, Raven whispered, there's something off about this shipment. Not just the crops, the data they're sending back. Look at this feed. Ghost crouched beside her, eyes scanning the holographic overlay. Numbers, graphs, soil models. They all aligned with impossible precision. It's learning, Raven said quietly. Everything it touches it remembers. Ghost didn't answer. He simply drew his blade. He had fought armies, empires, even monsters of the deep past. But this was something different. Something patient. Something that waited, like a shadow in the soil. And now, it had found Earth. The convoy was gone before anyone knew it had existed. Fields of engineered crops, marked for extinction, now lay in pieces, silent under the night sky. Ghost and Raven had done their work. But as they walked away, Raven's eyes stayed glued to the terminal. It's not just the crops, she muttered. It's sending something. Somewhere else. Somewhere, beyond us. Ghost's eyes narrowed. Show me. On the display, faint pulses traced a path across the globe, subtle and calculated. Each node was a potential disaster. Each node reported its failures back to a central hub. Someone is cataloging every failure, Ghost said. Every famine, every crop loss, every human reaction. Raven's fingers hesitated. It's alive. Not alive like us, not like you. It thinks. And it learns. We're dealing with something adaptive. The night air thickened. Ghost felt the weight of years press down on him, a burden he had never carried before. Raven's voice pulled him back. We have to trace it, Raven said. Before it spreads further. Ghost's blade hummed faintly. Then we follow the signal. No matter where it leads. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't know if he would return. Over the next few days they followed the small clues. Breadcrumbs small enough but still detectable to a hacker like Raven. Code fragments, encrypted messages not fully deleted. They found themselves staring at a large old seed vault hidden hundreds of meters underground. The vault smelled of cold metal and sterility, but it was anything but safe. Ghost slipped through laser grids and biometric locks as though they were paper, leaving no trace. Raven followed, weaving her way into the vault's network, bypassing centuries of human and corporate encryption. Rows upon rows of seeds glimmered under controlled light, crops that had survived the worst of humanity's wars, preserved for posterity, now carried the fingerprints of something older, something alien. Look at this, Raven said, magnifying the code embedded in the vault's system. This isn't just contamination, it's rewriting inheritance. The seeds themselves are learning, adapting, and reporting back. Ghost's eyes swept the vault. A weapon disguised as life, he said quietly. The kind of thing no one can fight with bullets or bombs. And then, deep in the system, Raven found the signature. A logic loop older than any human project, adaptive, recursive, patient. Blackroot. Ghost didn't flinch. He had faced horrors that would have broken gods. But this was a threat that required patience as much as skill. And patience was something Ghost had in abundance. The next part of the chase took them to a secret archive, or so they thought. The archive burned long before Raven and Ghost arrived. Ash still clung to the air, the smell of charred paper and chemical runoff stinging the lungs. The building's walls were scorched, windows shattered, yet the terminal racks had survived somehow, almost deliberately. Raven crouched beside a melted console, scanning. They tried to erase it all, she muttered. Someone wanted this gone, but the virus left breadcrumbs. Ghost's hand rested on his blade as he stepped inside. Decades of research lay twisted in smoke, fragments of reports scattered across the floor. The faint hum of residual energy tickled his senses. Not all of it human-made. Something older lingered here. What do you see? Ghost asked, voice low. Raven's eyes widened. Codes, sequences, algorithms that shouldn't exist. Not in any human lab. The recursion, it's alien, adaptive. It's thinking in ways we can barely simulate. Ghost crouched beside her, touching a terminal that hummed faintly. Images flickered across the screen. Maps, plant genetics, planetary models. Raven's fingers flew over the holograms. It's Blackroot, she whispered. But it's more. It's not just Earth. It's designed to propagate, learn, survive. Whoever made this didn't plan for war. They planned for domination of life itself. Ghost's mind went back decades, to wars where empires fell from famine before the first sword struck. And humans found it, he said quietly. We tried to harness it. We made it worse. Raven leaned back, eyes scanning the network nodes still alive, flickering through residual satellite links. It's spreading logic, not just spores, she said. It's almost alive in a way I can't contain. And it's patient, waiting. Ghost stood, eyes cold. Then we follow it. We trace the signal, whatever it is, whoever left it. We finish this before it finishes us. Outside, the wind carried ashes of 100 forgotten seeds. Raven tapped the terminal one last time. It's coming from somewhere not here. Far away, somewhere beyond our systems. Ghost sheathed his blade. Then we go to it. For the first time, Ghost felt a cold certainty. This was no longer a human problem. Blackroot was larger than Earth, larger than humanity, larger than anyone alive today. And they were the only ones who could chase it. Raven didn't like money. She never had. Numbers were tools, not truths. But now, every ledger, every corporate record, every charity donation was a potential clue. The world had been infiltrated subtly. Funds flowed into research labs, seed programs, and emergency relief programs that seemed humanitarian, even noble. But Raven traced the paths and realized the pattern. Every transaction, every subsidy, every grant led back to a handful of shell corporations, all cloaked in layers of encryption and fake identities. Ghost, she said, tapping rapidly on the terminal, look at this. The labs we raided, the vaults we burned, they weren't just working on crops. They were improving the virus. Each human modification, each genetic tweak, every bioengineered improvement, it all feeds Blackroot. Ghost's jaw tightened. So humanity's greed, curiosity, and optimism helped it evolve. Raven nodded grimly. Exactly. They thought they were fighting famine. They were teaching Blackroot how to survive. She pulled up a network map of financial flows, glowing lines stretching from Earth to orbital stations, to offshore research hubs, to hidden facilities no human government wanted to acknowledge. And embedded deep in the data, anomalies. Tiny, subtle sequences, almost like alien code hiding inside human systems. I've seen this before, Raven muttered. Recursive logic loops, decision-making patterns, not human. Not artificial intelligence. Something else. Something older. Ghost studied the map. So it's here, he said finally. Not just the virus, not just the plants, but someone or something is guiding it. Raven swallowed. I think it's not just guidance. It's teaching. Blackroot is learning from humanity, but the teacher isn't human. For the first time, Ghost hesitated. His years of battles, of wars and assassinations, offered no precedent for this. Which race? He said simply, this is old. Far older than us. Far older than humans. Raven replied, someone or something designed this to evolve on its own, with us unknowingly as its tutors. The two of them sat in silence, watching the web of money, research, and life intertwine. Blackroot was everywhere, and humanity had made it stronger. Ghost's voice cut through the stillness. Then we follow the money, Raven. To the root, to whoever or whatever is behind it. Raven nodded, tapping into the final trace. A faint signal flickered beyond the solar system, faint but unmistakable, a pulse, a heartbeat, a call from the stars. Ghost sheathed his blade. Then we answer. No matter the distance, no matter the cost. And for the first time, Ghost understood. This wasn't just about stopping a virus. It was about confronting an intelligence older than humanity, one that had chosen Earth as a classroom for its galactic experiment. Somewhere out there, the Zytherans waited. The signal came quietly at first. Raven didn't notice it in the chaos of tracing nodes, hacking networks, and watching Ghost cut paths through physical obstacles. It wasn't a warning, not an attack, not even a command. It was a report. Raven froze, staring at the stream of data. Her fingers hovered over the interface, afraid to touch it. She traced the logic loops, stripped away human protocols, and let the alien architecture breathe. The patterns were administrative, procedural, calculating, and then she saw it. World status, active collapse. Raven's mouth went dry, her fingers shook. Ghost, she said, voice barely audible, Earth isn't a target, it's a subject. Ghost didn't look up. Explain, he said quietly. Raven pointed to the data feed. Blackroot isn't just a weapon. It's a sensor. Every failed harvest, every famine, every human reaction, it all feeds back to a central analysis. Earth is being evaluated, Ghost's hand tightened around his blade. Evaluated for what? Raven hesitated. She pulled the next layer of data. Translation was slow. Scytheran logic was not meant for humans. But slowly, painfully, she understood. Collapse probability. 87.4%. Intervention threshold met. They don't invade healthy worlds, Raven said finally. They wait. They starve them until the math says resistance isn't worth it. Ghost's eyes darkened. The fires of the farm they had passed burned behind them, green fields turning to ash. Then it's not a weapon, he said. It's a test. Raven traced the outgoing signal. It was weak, degraded but clear. Blackroot had broadcast everything it learned before they destroyed the nodes. Not coordinates. Not please. A recommendation. Earth wasn't flagged for annihilation yet. It was flagged for management. Ghost's jaw tightened. How long do we have? Raven ran the projections. Alien timelines didn't care about urgency the way humans did. Best case? Years. Worst case? Months. For what? For them to decide whether we're worth saving or worth harvesting, Raven said. Ghost's hand tightened around the hilt of his blade. Then we change the numbers, he said, voice low, steady, unflinching. Raven muted the feed, but she knew the truth. Somewhere out there, a civilization had updated a file, and Earth's name was on it. The game was no longer survival. The game was proof. The stars stretched like a black canvas as Raven and Ghost approached Scythera Prime. It wasn't a planet in the human sense. The surface writhed, continents shifting like living tissue, oceans glowing faint green, and cities grown rather than built. Light bent around the massive structures, casting impossible shadows. Raven's fingers flew across the interface. This is insane. Nothing in human databases matches these coordinates. Nothing we know survives here. Ghost didn't respond. He watched the planet, feeling the hum of something ancient vibrating through the void. His blade rested across his back, sensing a presence older than Earth itself. This is it, he said finally. The origin of Blackroot. Raven nodded, and judging by the signal, the entire galactic network is coordinated from here. They descended in silence. Raven jammed the external sensors, masking their approach. The closer they got, the more the planet seemed to react, shifting its architecture in anticipation, like the surface itself was alive and aware. The landing zone was a twisting labyrinth of crystalline spires. Gravity fluctuated unpredictably, the floor rose and fell under unseen forces. Alien guardians emerged, creatures that were part organic, part machine, all lethal. Their limbs extended like serrated cables, eyes glowing with a logic that judged every move. Ghost stepped forward, blade humming. He didn't hesitate. Immortal instincts took over. Every strike, every parry, every movement was a perfect calculation. The guardians fell, adaptive but slow against a warrior outside time. Raven dove into the alien network, letting her consciousness merge with the living code of the city. Streams of data wrapped around her like a storm, twisting, folding, and testing every logic construct she threw at it. Ghost, Raven shouted over the hum of energy, the city is learning from us. Every attack, every hack, it adapts instantly. Ghost moved through the crystalline streets with lethal precision. Then we become the lesson it never expected. At the planet's heart, they found it. The central algorithm, a crystalline sphere of pure energy and shifting code, pulsating with intelligence. Blackroot itself originated here, not as spores or data, but as living, calculating logic. Ghost paused. This isn't just a lab. It's a mind. Raven's eyes widened as she traced the feedback loops. And it just noticed us. The sphere expanded, tendrils of energy weaving through the streets, bending gravity and reality itself. Scytheran defenses were instinctive, adaptive, near impossible to predict. But Raven and Ghost weren't ordinary invaders. Ghost cut a path through guardians, blade arcing in anti-gravity swings. Raven overloaded subroutines, turning the city's own logic against it. Keep it busy, Ghost shouted. You mean screaming into eternity? Raven replied, smirking despite the chaos. They reached the outer shell of the central algorithm. Raven planted a recursive feedback program, designed to fracture the intelligence without letting it escape to other nodes. Ghost braced, hand on his blade. Now, Ghost said. The feedback ignited. Tendrils of crystalline code writhed, tearing themselves apart. The city convulsed, its very geometry folding in on itself. The central algorithm fractured. Blackroot's signal splintered. They leapt clear as the planet shook violently, the first major node destroyed but far from the last. Ghost caught his breath. We did it, he said, but the screen still flickered with weak signals. Raven shook her head. Not all of it. This was one planet, one node. The network is bigger than we imagined. The immortal warrior stared into the void. Then we keep moving. We hunt every node until the plague dies or until we die trying. Raven nodded, fingers already tracing the faint pulses of other worlds. Then let's see how fast immortals and ghosts can run. Across the galaxy, faint pulses blinked, waiting, watching. Blackroot had survived, but the war had begun in earnest. The first planet was Tharnis IV, a desert world where sandstorms raged across blackened plains. Cities had crumbled into ruins, rivers dried to cracked beds, and the sky was a permanent ochre haze. Raven scanned the ruins. Every failed harvest, every famine, it's all catalogued. Blackroot's learning faster than we can destroy it. Ghost moved among the ruins, blade humming softly. They don't just kill, he said quietly. They perfect collapse. Every failure is a lesson. Every mistake is a blueprint. They destroyed a central node hidden beneath a crumbling observatory, but fragments of Blackroot had already migrated into the underground networks. The desert seemed to pulse faintly, somehow clinging onto life. Next came Nivalis 7, a frozen world of snow and ice. Blackroot had mutated differently here, thriving in geothermal vents, spreading spores that survived sub-zero temperatures. Ghost struck out at the alien growth while Raven hacked environmental systems to collapse subterranean tunnels. For a moment, they destroyed one node, but new variants had already adapted to escape detection. Everywhere we destroy it, Raven said, frustration creeping into her voice, it leaves a copy somewhere else. Like it knows we're coming. Ghost's hand rested on his blade. Then we move faster. The third planet was Aben Reach, a world of floating archipelagos and endless oceans. Blackroot had evolved into a viral aquatic variant, infecting marine life, air currents, and cloud formations. Raven traced its signals to a network of planetary satellites designed to beam data across light years. They're coordinating, she said. Each planet teaches the others. Blackroot isn't just a weapon, it's a galactic intelligence now. Ghost's eyes darkened. So every world it touches learns. And every world that learns becomes a threat to the next one. Back in orbit, Raven plotted the full network, nearly 50 worlds, all partially collapsed, all feeding intelligence back to central nodes in hidden star systems. If we don't destroy the nodes faster than they replicate, Raven said, we won't save any of them. Not Earth, not Tharnis, not a single planet. Ghost's blade hummed against his back. Then we hunt every node, he said, voice low and certain. Until Blackroot is dead or until we're the only ones left standing. Raven nodded, fingers already tracing the faint pulses of other worlds. Across the galaxy, faint pulses blinked, waiting, watching. The war had become cosmic in scale. Days turned into weeks. Each time they destroyed a node, they got one step closer to their end goal, and then finally the last set of coordinates led them beyond mapped space, into the void between galaxies, where stars were few and strange energy pulses glimmered like dying fireflies. This is it, Raven said quietly. The extinction steward, the origin of the network. The core. Ghost's eyes were cold, unwavering. Then we finish it, once and for all. The steward was unlike any structure in the galaxy. Not a planet, not a station, a moving stellar construct. Its surface was alive with ecosystems harvested from extinct worlds, fused with crystalline towers and shifting alien geometry. Gravity folded and unfolded around them, as if the construct itself were breathing. Raven muttered under her breath, everything it's learned. Every collapse, every extinction, every miscalculation, it's all here. Ghost's blade hummed, then let's make a mistake it won't forgive. They weren't alone this time. Other immortals, warriors like Ghost, survivors of forgotten wars and alien battles, arrived from the folds of space. The first wave of defenses emerged, guardians grown from failed species, half machine, half biological horrors, adaptive and relentless. Ghost moved through them like history itself, cutting, striking, and never slowing. Raven dove into the steward's network, merging her consciousness with the alien architecture. The system shifted, folding, testing, anticipating. Every hack was a battle, every signal a war. It's not defending itself, Raven shouted. It's evaluating us. Ghost's eyes narrowed. Then we become the lesson it never expected. Inside the steward, time and space no longer followed rules. Gravity bent in impossible directions, corridors looped on themselves, and light fractured into multiple spectra. At the core, the prime directive glowed, a crystalline structure older than any galaxy, inscribed with the Zytheran axiom. Civilizations that destabilize ecosystems will collapse. Collapse must be guided. Raven's fingers traced the logic loops. It's not evil, she whispered. It's law. It's policy. Blackroot is just the enforcement. Ghost stepped forward. Then we break the law. They reached the heart of the construct, a pulsing sphere of energy and living code. Raven began the override sequence, carefully fracturing the AI's recursive logic. Do it, Ghost said. But the steward resisted, adaptive beyond anything Raven had seen. The very rules of collapse bent around their interference. Then came the choice. The steward offered them an impossible choice. Destroy it and leave the galaxy without a safety net, or leave it alive and accept Earth's eventual destruction. Raven's voice trembled. If we destroy it, worlds will live, but collapse will happen naturally. No more intervention, no more correction. Ghost's grip tightened on his blade. Life isn't meant to be managed. Raven activated the final sequence. Recursive contradictions, temporal loops, and alien logic collided. The prime directive fractured under the paradox. The steward convulsed. Stellar matter unraveled into harmless radiation. Blackroot's galactic network went dark, every node, every fragment, every echo. Raven turned to Ghost. It's over. Time to run. But Ghost didn't get out with Raven. The immortal warrior, fused briefly with the steward's core, became part of the collapse sequence, a living anchor in the unmaking of Blackroot. A personal sacrifice to ensure the job was done. Raven watched as the last pulses blinked out. Silence. Across dozens of worlds, soil stabilized, ecosystems began to heal. For the first time, collapse was no longer scheduled. Months later, Earth breathed again. The wind carried the scent of fertile soil, rivers ran clear, and fields slowly regained their green. Humanity, scarred but unbroken, rebuilt on lessons learned too late, yet still alive. Raven stood on a hill overlooking a recovering valley, the first sprouts of crops swaying gently in the sunlight. Her fingers brushed the edges of her portable terminal, now quiet, free from the alien networks that had once monitored every thought, every action. She remembered Ghost, the immortal warrior, her commander who had vanished inside the steward's collapse. Raven smiled faintly, a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. Some heroes don't walk out of battles. Some anchor the universe while the rest of us continue. The sky above shimmered faintly, stars blinking like distant eyes. Raven knew the Zytherans still existed, their policies and judgments etched into the fabric of the galaxy. But Earth was no longer marked. Humanity had survived its evaluation, its collapse averted. Raven tapped the terminal. Streams of recovered data scrolled across the display, archived knowledge, new growth simulations, the faint traces of Blackroot's learning sequences now inert, harmless. We did it, she whispered. Yet even as she spoke, the faintest pulse flickered in the farthest corners of the galaxy, a reminder that life and intelligence always adapts. Raven turned her gaze back to the horizon. Humanity had been tested, they had survived, and now, finally, the universe was theirs to navigate. The wind carried the scent of new beginnings. And for the first time, Raven allowed herself to hope. And then a beep, an incoming signal, a message so faint, so hard to decrypt, lots of static. What are you? Raven whispered to herself. She cleaned the message up as best as she could and played it. The voice was male, familiar, memorable. It said simply, I ain't dead yet, you bastards, now come and get me. Raven smiled and activated rescue operations while tracing the signal. Unbelievably, somehow, Ghost had survived, and it was time for him to come home. Thank you for listening, and please don't forget to like and subscribe for more short stories with Ghost and his immortals.